Na so nikaanza tu kusikia anaambia watu vile hata nipea pesa, she has taken me to school, so ni kama hiyo pesa amejilipa, vitu kama hizo. Yeah.
And what amount are we talking about here?
We are talking about 826,000. After hizo mambo zote za kunithreaten, kunitukana, she could insult me, mambo makubwa. Yeah, like you're a hoe, you'll never get, we ni malaya, takataka, nitakupiga mpaka polisi iamue, she threatened even to kill me, akaniambia ile siku yenye nitaenda nyumbani, ataniachia boma, naona.
Faith, those are very strong allegations against your mom. Tuko family, this episode of My Story is coming to you from Bungoma County. Our guest today, Faith, tells us that she has been in the Gulf for 2.5 years, accumulating savings close to 1 million shillings. What does she have right now? 0 shillings. Her mom spent it all, and on top of that, she cursed her and disowned her. Let's get to listen to Faith. My name is Kingori Wangeshi. Let's dive in. Thank you so much for allowing us to invade your space. But who is Faith?
Okay. Good morning, Tuko family. It's a chilly morning. I'm so happy that you are here. My name is Faith Namikoe. Currently, I'm staying at Lutungu, just near Nzoia Sugar Company. But this is not my home. I've not been raised here. This is my aunt's place. I was born in a family of 4. And my dad and my mom are both alive. I was born in Thika and raised in Ruiru and also in Western, near Tongareni, a place called Maisha Mapya. And my mom is a teacher. No, she's retired now. She retired back in 2022, I think, August. And my dad is a minister under Baptist Mission. I'm the second born in a family of 4. I have an elder brother, then I'm the second one. And then I have 2 sisters following me. Yeah.
Now, we are here because a lot has happened in your life.
Yeah.
So we begin from, what were you doing before you went to the Gulf?
Okay. When I was in Kenya, I was doing fast food business at a place called Sangalo Institute, just around there. First of all, I was in school in Moi University. And then when I was in school, I had a guy and he was doing some IT stuffs. And one day he opened a cyber so that he could be able to have a station that he could be working from. And so somehow he made me have passion in that, though I can't say that I have skills. First of all, when I met this guy, he was a friend. He was a basketball coach. Yeah, he had some titles. And he spotted me. And then something happened. My parents separated when I was in Form 3. So what transpired between my parents, I just came from school. And that night they fought. It was on a Sunday. And they fought at night and I didn't know what happened because I was in a boarding school. And then my mother left. So when she left, I was left with the whole family to take care of. Know how they're eating, my siblings and my dad. It was not easy. It was like 2 months. And then my mom came back with the family. My grandpa was still alive at that time. Both families came. They had a meeting, but I think they disagreed. And my mom went back with her dad and the brothers. And we were left alone. That was late December 2012. And then later on, my mom came and akabeba vitu kwa nyumba. Akachukua like almost everything. Akafunga makabati, akachukua mattresses, akabeba mahindi. And you know that time my dad was crying. The neighbors were crying as if someone has died. but my mom could not give my dad another chance, of which I don't want to blame her for what happened because I was not there. I can't say maybe my dad was good, but she knows why she did whatever she did. And so
Now, what made you leave Kenya for the Gulf? How did you know about that opportunity?
So after, no, I had heard about Gulf jobs because I had a desk mate, she's called Ressa. She was in Lebanon in 2018. So I really wanted to go to either of the Gulf countries, but I was not dreaming of going there as a house girl. And by 2018, I had my paper under hotel management. So my mind was not even thinking that I can be a house girl or, yeah. So I tried talking to her, but she was not willing to give me any information. And then I was just, it is okay. At that time, I was not so much into social media. So I had less information about Gulf, about jobs, and so I got reluctant. And then when my relationship was not okay and we parted, that was March 12, 2020. Yeah, after an assault, I started tamarking, and then 2 weeks COVID came and things were not okay.
Faith, could you explain a little bit further about the assault issue that made you part ways with your
It was not it was the third assault that made me leave. The first one happened like on a Friday, and on Tuesday was the election. That was 2017. So I was in school and things were not okay. Like the relationship, we had stayed for 1 year and I had a miscarriage. And so after that nikaona like ai hapana. So after amenipiga hivyo vibaya kwa stage ya bodaboda, watu wakakuja kunirescue, then so akaanza kukana like hakunipiga because my dad called, akasema hapana si kumpiga, he denied, but there was enough evidence that alikuwa amenipiga. So again he came and bet me the second time. That was 2018. And in the period of around 3 or 4 years nilikuwa nimebeba nguo like mara 5. So nilikuwa ile naenda ananifuata, he's like he has changed, he's going to be a good man, so namwamini. But sasa ikafika that 2020 nilikuwa nimeenda shopping ya duka. So kuja, because we were running a cyber, a fast food outlet and a shop. So when I came back, there was a time alinifuata kama nimeenda, then simu yake ikaanguka. So wakati simu ilianguka, I had to give him my phone. So wakati nilimpatia simu yangu, nilibaki bila simu. So I stayed like 3 or 4 months without a phone. So that day nikaambiwa I qualify for mshwari of 1,000 shillings. So what I did, nikakopa hiyo pesa, nikanunua mlika mwizi. So that is what ended that relationship. Because when I came back, he bet me and he was like, why did I buy that phone instead of kuweka hii pesa kwa biashara? And remember, the rule was that yeye enda na save pesa. He could not allow me to save any money. He could not allow me nilipwe na M-Pesa kwa line yangu. If I changed my M-Pesa pin, ingekuwa shida. If he could find that maybe I've sent my dad money, it could be a very big problem. So generally life was not okay, and most of the time I used to cry and just wish nitoke, but it was not possible. But sasa ikafika hiyo time, I felt like sina anything yangu. And when we are trying to save money, all of a sudden atakwambia hana pesa, amekopesha dadake, sijui nini, without even telling me. So unapata when the colleges wamefunga, wakifungua hamna stock, hamna rent, sometimes ni time ya license hamjalipa, and the whole burden, financial burden was on me. Yeah, so when he assaulted me that night, I felt like now this is the last time and I should not give him a chance again. Yeah.
Now, take us to Gulf. You've landed. What did you go to do there? How was it? Did you get some culture shock or were you prepared? How was life in the Gulf?
Life in the Gulf was not easy. And when I went for training, we met some ladies who had already been there, and they were not ready maybe to go back to the same houses. That is why they went back for training. So that is when I really knew life in Gulf, how it was, because back in Kenya I had not known life in Gulf, how it was. So I got an overview, maisha huko. But I was so much ready, because now at this point when I'm deciding to go, this guy is insulting me, he's insulting my parents, sending messages, a lot was happening. And in fact, I didn't go to Gulf for money. I went for peace and healing, because I wanted to break a certain cycle. So at this moment, we are doing everything, and by God's grace, it didn't take long, because some people it can even take 8 months. But for me, it only took like less than 2 months. I had done my medical, gotten my passport, done everything, even the exams, and my visa was out. So when we left, we landed in, I think, in Haile Airport. And then we were taken to the office. So when we went there, the first thing that I was shocked was about the food. Yeah, we were served, I don't know, they call them sandwich. I don't know, they are bread rolls or what. We just black tea, and there was no literally food that I can say it was food. And just coming to interact with Philippines and Indonesians, I had not met them before, and people from Bangladesh. It was a culture shock. And, back in my mind, I knew every white person speaks English, and only to realize that hawajui English hata moja. And it was hard to communicate, but fortunately just it took me like an hour or two, and my boss came for me. So when he came for me, there's something that shifted in me that I didn't expect and didn't know. Like you see, we've landed as a group. We were, I think, 11. And then my boss comes to pick me. Then I think I was the second one. So I'm leaving my team behind. And this means that I'm not going to see them again until after 2 years. So that came to my mind, and I was afraid, I was anxious, like, now how is life going to be? Now reality hit me, like, now sasa nimeshafika Gulf, hii ni maisha yangu peke yangu, and hizo vitu nimesikia sasa, like, I should be ready to face them. So tukatoka. Unfortunately, my boss didn't know English. So he just asked me, what's your name? I said, Faith. And he was so happy. Like, no, I was surprised. Why is he happy? So kumbe pia the Muslims, they wanaitana Faith. In my mind, I just knew Faith was a Christian name. So tukaenda, alidrive like an hour, tukafika. So vile tulifika, it was around noon. So uko wamejenga nyumba in designs that are just funny, not like in Kenya. Sasa mimi nikashindwa, hii nyumba yenye tunaingia mosque kuomba ama nini? So I removed my shoes. He was like, hapana usitoe viatu, because back in my mind I know when you go to the mosque you have to remove your shoes. So mimi nikatoa viatu, akaniambia no. Nikavaa. So tukaingia tena in another door. Then I removed my shoes again. He was like, no. So the time we entered the house, tukapata the mother-in-law alikuwa pale. So she was a grandma, and I think she's around 85 years now. So now language barrier started. I could not even understand anything. She would talk to me, I could not understand. And now the daughter to my madam, because my employer was a madam. So the daughter had not gone to school. She prepared some chicken and French fries for me. She served me, and I felt good. Yeah.
What was your scope of work? What were you doing there in that house? How can you give us exactly what you're doing? And
now later on, my madam came. I can't say that first impression was bad. So I stayed for like, she just told me to rest, and then the following day she started now showing me what to do. So basically I was doing everything from babysitting, cleaning the house, cooking, taking care of of her mom, now the grandma, taking care of the daughter and the whole house. The house was so big, it was a story building of around 20 rooms, and it had 2 backyards that ungeosha usugue vizuri because they were white tiles, niwoshe gari. And then my madam alikuwa ameadopt mtoto nilipata, she was adopted, she only has one daughter. And 4 had died. So maybe I think because maybe alikuwa shafika around 50 years, and maybe she felt she needed a kid, she went in for adoption. So the kid that I was taking care of, she was not biological daughter to my madam. Na sasa huko the entire nanny work ni yako wewe. Utalala na mtoto, utamchange, wende utaambia madam mtoto ni mgonjwa, wende utasema pampers zimeisha. Like kama unafanya kazi huko, everything ni wewe utafanya. You are the one to give report, like hivi imeenda hivi. Yeah, so I can't say that I had a specific job. Everything nilikuwa nafanya kila kitu. Yeah, hata mpaka stima ikiharibika ninaambiwa nipande kwa ngazi tukatengeneze bulb. Kama ni kufix the wardrobes, atakuja na hiyo driller na nyundo, fixing curtains. There was a time ni kisima ya maji wamechimba chini, then imesementiwa. So it's like a water reservoir. Sasa sini tangi na the tanker will bring water. So sometimes she could tell me to get inside to clean, and it was not an easy work. Yeah, and then when I went, hiyo ghorofa yake ilikuwa imejengwa na haijamalizwa. So kulikuwa na tiles huko juu, kulikuwa na bricks, kulikuwa na takataka mingi sana. So nilikuwa nabeba kutoka huko juu nikaenda kutupa nje. Yeah, ilikuwa kazi mingi sana.
How was the pay?
I can't say it was bad according to the contract, but sometimes we have expectations, and our focus is not on salary. We focus on tips, we focus on maybe utapatiwa nini as top up, you know. Hiyo ndo inakuanga akili ya mtu sana. Umepatiwa tip ya pesa ngapi? And it didn't happen with me, because if I can remember, my madam was doing very well, but my salary was just 900 reals. So nikiconvert kwa pesa ya Kenya, ungepata ni something like I started with around maybe 28,000, because my salary for 2 months haingefika 60,000. Yeah, but with the time, that was mid 2022, my salary sasa rate ikakuwa at least. So ungepata my salary is around 31,000, and I could really sacrifice. Yeah, I remember nikikuwa huko, I just bought 1 pair of shoe and a very cheap phone, because things were not okay in Kenya. So all my mind was, wacha ni save, nataka ni buy shamba, because I don't want to go back home to my parents after maybe a failed relationship. I wanted to start my own life. So I saved for all that time. Sikununua kitu.
Where were you saving this money? Were you sending it back home, or were you saving when you were there?
First of all, when I left, the agreement was that I'll be sending my aunt money so that she can deposit in my bank account. But before I left, my aunt insisted, like, you've not been home for a long time. That was 4 years and 9 months. You need to go back home so that maybe you can get your parents' blessings. And I was not willing, because I have had a strained relationship with my mom. And at that time, she was calling her and telling her a lot, and I was listening. So I was not willing, but she just convinced me to go. And I was like, because she had sacrificed for my going, because aliuza mahindi, alitoka kwa giza akienda kuuza mahindi. She was the one who gave me connection. Like, alifacilitate kila kitu. Out of her not having a lot, I saw her heart. And I said, because she's my mom's sister, and she's so willing that I reconcile with my mom, I said it was okay, let me do it. So when I went home, my agent called, because I didn't have a phone at that time. So, and my mom was my next of kin. So walimpigia simu wakamwambia wananitafuta. So my mom was like, nimepigiwa simu wanasema your ticket is ready, kwani do you want to travel? I told her yes, but I wasn't sure when, so I couldn't tell you that I was in this process. And at that time we were not even in terms with her. It was just like 2 months before. So I didn't feel like I should tell her. So at this time, my mom tells me, oh, you know what? I'm going to retire. And she had some 2 plots and a piece of land. So she told me, now that I don't have rentals or any source of income, why can't you be sending me your money so that I can use? And then when I before you come, nitakuwa nimepata salary, and then I'll do what you want. Then she asked me, what do you want? I told her I want a piece of land. She said, in fact, nitakununulia shamba na nitakuprosesia upate kazi Dubai ya hoteli, because I had some of my cousins wako Dubai. So I was like, it's a good idea, and this is my mom, and I was like, because we've not had a good relationship, then maybe this is the time for us maybe to be friends, like, you know. I said, wacha nipeane hii chance nikijua that it is going to rebuild our relationship, the trust, the love, you know. So wakati nilienda kule, she gave me now her photocopy of her identity card. So wakati nilifika huko, ikawa sasa I shifted from not sending my aunt money to sending my mom. So haikuwa tena ati niweke kwa account yangu. So ikakuwa ni natumia tu mom, then yeye anatumia, because the agreement was use the money the way you want, because after all you are going to pay, na mimi ni shamba nataka. Then because ameniambia nitakuprocess upate job in Dubai, then I was so much willing. So sikuwahi sense kama maybe things will be the way they ended. Yeah.
How long did you stay in the Gulf, and which country were you in?
I was in Saudi Arabia, and the funny part of it, the day I reached Nairobi at the office, and I asked my agent, like, which countries do you offer? He was like, Saudi Arabia. Nikamwambia huko mimi siendi. I've heard a lot about Saudi Arabia and I'm not going. So he didn't want to convince me, because sometimes ni kitu kama kamkosi. Unajua, when you are convinced to do something that you don't want to do and then something happens, maybe he carries the blame. So I just saw everybody just willing, and I was like, kwani am I the only one who is going to die? If I'm going to die also, they are going to die. So that time I became willing, na nikasema okay, nita give in. So, and even nikiangalia the offices, you know, they just had an apartment ambayo iko na maofisi na different offices. So from first floor to around 4th floor, hizo zote ni offices za kwenda Gulf. But nikiangalia kwa mlango zimeandikwa Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia. So I was like, no, si mimi peke yangu nenda kukufa. So nika give in na tukafanya processes zote, and then I left to Gulf. Then when I was there, I worked for 2 years and 5 months, and my stay was naweza sema ilikuwa nusu. I had a lot of challenges because sikuwahi patiwa off. Nilikuwa nafanya kazi mpaka around saa 8 ya usiku, and I was there for 3 Ramadhans. 3 Ramadhans means kila siku you work for over, like unafanya kazi kama nitalala hiyo saa 8 ya usiku, hiyo ni for over 40 days. Kumbuka niko na mtoto, mchana nafanya kazi zote, then ikifika saa 9 tunaanza kupika. Ukumbuke kazi za nyumba ziko hapo, kufua, kuosha mtoi, nyumba ni kubwa na huko ni usafi, si mchezo. So after nimeshafanya kazi zote zenye huwa nafanya on normal days, and because this is Ramadan, then bado kuna samosa nafaa kutengeneza, kuna hizo I don't know they are called what, sijui nini rolls hizo, just a lot of snacks that ukifika huko utajua once umefunzwa. So hiyo pia iko hapo. So it was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. Alafu I didn't have a bedroom, and ni kitu yenye nilikuja kurealize that most of the house girls there, they don't have a bedroom. Yeah, so utapata maybe unalala kwa room ya sala, ni hiyo room yao ya maombi, or they just don't care about a house girl. You are not given beddings. Very few house girls are given mahali pa kulala. So, and challenge pia kulala ilikuwa ile time nilikuwa nimekuwa kulala somewhere like a store room. So kulikuwa kunekwa food huko na vitu zingine. Then there was no ventilation. So most of the time ungepata nimelala mlango ikiwa wazi and then nashindwa kupumua. So my boss akakuja kurealize the challenge that I go through. Pia mvua ikinyesha ilikuwa inaingia ndani. It was leaking. So unapata like malazi imenyeshewa and nilikuwa nalala chini. So my boss akaniambia hapana, ama uende kwa sala. Sala sasa ni hiyo room ya kuomba. So nikaenda huko, kufika huko. Now another challenge was, hiyo ndo mlango boss alikuwa anapenda kutumia kitoka nje. Sasa unapata anasahau kufunga mlango ya nyumba. So na hiyo baridi kikuja ina bang mlango. Sasa unaamka, mtoto anaamka analia the whole night. Mtoto akiamuka kutoka kwa hiyo room anaenda maybe living room anaanza kulia na huko. Nikalala huko nikaona huko siwezi. So we could joke, he was so good to me. Then namwambia sasa, what do we do? No, akaniambia he's so forgetful. Then I had to shift again. From there, nikaenda kuanza kulala kwa room ya shosho. If I can remember, hiyo nyumba ya 20 rooms, it only had 3 bedrooms. Hizi rooms zingine hata you can't tell ni nini iko ndani. Mara ni room ya maombi, sijui ni room ya nini. So nikahama nikaenda kulala na shosho. Now again, it was a challenge. Because shosho angelala mchana sana, usiku she's so active, na unajua uko bado wako na paper bags. They call them keys. Sasa unapata anapanga manguo usiku, anakuja anawasha light, she's making a lot of noise, you know. Sasa mtoto anaamuka, hata mimi nikikuwa hapa I cannot even sleep. It was terrible.
You came back after 2 years and 5 months. When did you learn about the situation that you are in right now?
I think maybe there were signs, but ni mimi nilikata kuamini. You know, sometimes ukishaamini mtu you become a Thomas. Mpaka ushike hivi ndo ujue like. So kitu ili happen, ilifika place that was, now my contract imeisha. That was 2022. No, 2023. Contract imeisha, nimemaliza 2 years, nafaa kukuja. So back in my mind, kwa sababu nimechoka and it reached a place pia, huyu grandma akavunjika mguu, akavunjika hip joint. So ikakuwa ni now 6 months of kumuosha and it was a lot. Now I turned to a caregiver and nanny on top. Na kuna kitu nilikuwa nasaidiwa. It was a lot of work. I felt so frustrated. Nikaona ile nye hata nikilala nikiamka nasikia ni kama nimepigwa mafimbo hii mwili. Kuamka kabisa siwezi. So nikaona now that hii kazi imekuwa venye iko na matusi ni mingi, kelele ni mingi, you know, unaambiwa ufanye kazi. There was just a lot. Nikaona this environment is so toxic. So I told my mom, I'm just preparing to come back. And shocking, my mom was like, mbona usiongeze mwaka mmoja? Sasa nikashindwa mbona na insist niongeze 1 year and yet amepata pension. So nilikuwa najaribu kumuuliza umepata pension? Then hakuwa ananiambia ukweli. So one day I think it was just by God's grace. Akaniambia amepata do. So amepata pesa but ana insist bado nifanye nini, bado nikae huko. So venye nilimwambia siwezi, akaniambia watu wanavumilianga, mbona mimi sitaki kuvumilia. So at that time nikaona hapana, wacha nikuje. So nikakuja bila kumwambia. But even before nikuje bila kumwambia, sasa hata hatukuwa tunaongea for the last 2 months when walikuwa najaribu kunikatia ticket and all that nikuje. We were not talking because akaniambia nimekataa kumsaidia kujenga plot and yet sister yake alikuwa na wanaume na bado alikufa. That thing really pained me. Yeah, akaniambia even my sister alikuwa na wanaume wengi. Yeah, na bado alikufa ukimwi. No, umekataa kunisaidia kujenga maploti. Sasa nikashindwa, mimi niko Gulf, I'm not married. Sasa hii na relate na wapi? Yeah, because mimi I've been here for 2 years. I've not done anything to myself. I've been just sending you money. Like in 2 months I would send her even 70,000, 74,000, you know. Sasa kwa nini hautaki nirudi? So at that time, nikasema mimi nitakuja bila kumwambia. So nikaambia my madam I want to go back. So my madam was like, will you come back? Nikamwambia hapana because mimi akili yangu ilikuwa nikikuja I'm going to Dubai. Then I told my mom like, sasa juu nimefanya kazi na kuna mamiezi nimeongezea, si kuna savings na kuna hii pesa ya juu. Nikamwambia because my madam ningemwambia hata nataka nguo, nataka sweater. She could order clothes, but mimi hata kwa pesa yangu alikuwa nakataa. Even buying a phone, I had cried like a whole year. Amekataa kuninunulia simu na pesa yangu, unaona. So ndo siku moja tu akapigia bwana simu akamwambia house girl amekataa anataka simu, what do we do? Akamwambia kuna masimu zinauzwa, good phones, we can go and get her. Ndio maana nikaenda kubaiwa simu. But kumbuka mimi hata sweta pekee nilikuwa navaa sweta ya boss wangu. Mimi sikuwa na sweta, mimi sikuwa na viatu, mimi sikuwa na nguo. So nikaona tumesukumana na huyu mama for long hajai nibaia nguo, nikasema wacha nifanye nini, nitakuja kununua nguo Kenya. So nikaambia my mom hii pesa ya juu nieke, nikikuja I'll buy a phone because simu nilikuwa nayo storage ilikuwa kidogo. Nikamwambia nitakuja kununua simu na nikuje kununua nguo. Then sasa hii pesa ingine si ni ya shamba. And then you said you will gift me a job. Utanisaidia nipate kazi. That alikuwa ameniambia that is my thank you for you helping me. So mimi nilijua hii pesa ya juu it was around 200,000. So nikajua hii pesa nitafanya nayo vitu zangu, and then hii ingine savings itanunua shamba, and then Dubai misi ninaenda tu. So nika process nikakuja, but we were not in terms, we were not talking because there are messages that she sent me and voice notes, and I felt like how ni feel as a mother. And I was so shocked because my mom being a teacher and she knows what is happening there. Mbona alikuwa nataka niendelee kukaa huko na yeye anajua maisha huko ni magumu. So at that moment I said, now that I don't have a kid and I don't have siblings who are going to school, why am I staying here? So that is when I decided to come.
Then what happened when you came and I think, did you meet her? What was your interaction?
So venye alikuwa ameniongelesha hivyo nikiwa huko and we stopped talking, nikakuja bila kumwambia. Then vile nilifika Nairobi, I have one of my girlfriends ambaye tulienda naye, she's called Rahab. Kwao ni Maridadi Kitale, then Maridadi. So akaniambia, now that umeenda, I want to send you money so that you get my mom some hot pots. But sasa mimi at that moment hata sikuwa nataka kwenda nyumbani. So venye alinitumia pesa, ikawa there is a lady that niliacha kwa hiyo nyumba, nao bishop wake ndo alikuja kunipick airport. So nikaenda kwake, I stayed there for 3 days and then nika travel. So I was forced to go to Kitale, but mimi nilikuwa nataka nikuje huku because my aunt has been in my journey, though she has not raised me, but tumekuwa close na yeye. So ikawa nikuje huku, but because of the hotpots I had to go to Kitale. So nikamit na mama ya Rahab, nikampatia hotpots. Then from there I went to my last born sister. Alikuwa amewed, that was in 2022, so alikuwa na kwake. So nikaenda kwake, tukakaa, then she was just convincing me like, wacha tu tuende, and she's one person angeniambia kitu singeruka, we were so close. So the time aliniambia tu tuende home, nilikubali. So tukaenda. But unfortunately, vile tulifika home, my mom always alikuwa anasema, baba yenu aliuza shamba, kwa hivyo mami sikulangi, wanakunywa tu chai na mandazi. I was shocked. Because tell me why, nikitoka Kenya, my mom had 8 months to retire. At this moment, amepata almost 4 million na amepata na shares, at which point, hawakukuwa nakula.
And yet you're sending money from Saudi Arabia and you're sending it to her.
Yeah. Nilikuwa namtumia pesa. Like after 2 months namtumia pesa. And that time, even my last born sister, she had finished her diploma. So hakuwa shule. My mom hakuwa na school fees. I don't think if she had something that was financially pressing her. So ikawa sasa vile alikuwa ananiambia hiyo statement, nao nimefika nyumbani, mi ni mgeni, si ndio? And kuna reception nilikuwa na expect. And tukirudi nyuma kidogo, nilikuwa shocked because after 2 years I told my mom I want to save my money. Hiyo pesa ya juu nataka ni save nikuje nifanyie 1 2 3. Do you know my mom convinced me still nimtumie pesa. So my mom amepata 4 million, amepata shares na bado ananiconvince ako kamshahara kadogo bado nimtumie. But mimi sikuona kama kuna kakitu mimi bado nikamtrust, nikamtumia. Then akaniambia ameapply loan. Sasa mimi hata akili haikuwa zile za umepata shares, umepata pension, umeenda loan ya nini? Naona alikuwa ameapply loan, akaniambia that was around mwezi wa 10. Akaniambia nimeapply loan, inakuja before January, ikikuja nitakuwekea hiyo pesa, because I remember that time rate ilikuwa mzuri, alafu nilikuwa nimeongezwa 100 rial ya huko. So that time nilikuwa natuma mshahara 2 sasa nilikuwa nimetuma 2000 rial. That was around 74,000, you see. So ikakuwa hiyo January kufika, she's not saying if amepata pesa ama hapana, because me I came in May. Sasa nikashindwa, but I was like, because kuna fraud na unasikia sijui simu zinakuwa replaced. A lot is happening when you are there and you can't access hata hizo Safaricom services. So I was like, because I trust her, nikamwambia just take hii pesa ya juu and lock, you know, hiyo pesa ikikuja ya loan, just take 100,000 and lock, so that nikikuja naweza pata nguo. So wakati nilikuja sasa, nimefika hivi sasa, simi ni mgeni nao, reception ni zile za sasa. Alikuwa ananiambia kwa Kiluya, papo nyoka kusia kumukunda mungo mnose holi changata, ati sasa babangu aliuza shamba, kwa hiyo boma hawakulangi. Wao anakunywa tu chai, yeye anakunyonga chai na mjukuu. Now that is my sister's daughter. Sasa mimi sikuwa hata najua nafaa kusema nini, because mimi sasa hiyo na expect kuna pesa. So that was hivyo tu ndivyo alikuwa ananiambia for the time that I was home, and she didn't mention if kuna pesa ama hapana.
So at what point did you ask for the money? How was that scenario?
So at that point I was dating, na wakati nilikuwa narudi, all my mind was now that I'm almost 30 and I've gotten this guy, he's someone I know. See, sasa we can settle down. And looking at him, he had built a house and he was doing farming vizuri, he had greenhouses and he was planting sugarcane. No. Sasa nikaona like kuna financial stability. Yeah, even if I move in and maybe I have my savings, tunaweza tu bado ishi. So at that moment akaniambia twende kwao, introduction. So introduction turned into something else. So nikaenda, and then I was there for like 3 days, and we had not even planned again to stay. It was just go and then come back and just hear what my mom would say about my savings, and then we plan like what are we going to do. So when I was there I fell sick. Yeah, hata wakati nilikuja nilikuwa mgonjwa. I think ni climate ilikuwa inanisumbua. I was so sickly. So nikakuwa mgonjwa tena. Now the father to that guy had take me to hospital. So at that time is when nilitumia my mom message. Nikamwambia niko mgonjwa na I cannot afford to treat myself juu sikuwa nimeregister SHA because I was not in the country. So hapo ndo matusi ilianza. Yeah, she started insulting me, then akatuma my uncle akuje aniambie nitoke kwa hiyo boma. So you know she's insulting me like I can't go back home, but bado anatumana nitoke kwa hiyo boma. So I was so confused like what am I supposed to do?
Utoke kwa boma gani?
Sasa uko kwenye nilikuwa nimeenda introduction. Yeah, nimeenda introduction, then less than a week niko mgonjwa, niko hospitalized, you see. So I was not able to come back. So and she akaanza sasa kuninsult sasa. Like yeye hawezi shughulikia bibi ya mtu. Yeah, she cannot take care of my bills. Yeah, niambie bwanangu anishughulikie. So mimi sikuwa na understand nafaa kufanya nini. She was not even talking about the money, but I just came to realize that even the loan that she applied for came. So my cousin akanipigia simu one day akaniambia mamako alikuwa amechukua matofali kwangu na amenilipa. See, you just vumilia tuende. Chenye atasema tu ni usikize, halafu akupe kenye atakupea. Even if it is 50,000, maybe you can start up a business, ununue hata nguo, usikatae. But at that time I had a lot of bitterness. Na nikasema kama hata nipatia reasonable amount of money, I'm not giving in. So but she convinced me. Even the husband called me, in-law, ukipenda tu kubali. I was like, it's okay, nimewaheshimu, let's go. So wakati tulienda nyumbani my mama hakuniongelesha, hakunisalimia. So nikapata my cousin ametoka, nilienda late. So nikampigia simu, nikamuuliza Maria, we agreed that we'll stay. Akaniambia mimi nilikuwa nafikiria ni mambo kidogo, but si venye nilikuwa nafikiria. Your mama said hata kuongelesha bila mandugu zake. So mimi nikamuuliza, my dad is alive na ako nyumbani. What is it that my uncles can come and solve here and my dad is ako nyumbani? So hivyo ndivyo tuliachana, and she continued insulting me, she continued threatening me. Na so nikaanza tu kusikia anaambia watu vile hata nipea pesa, she has taken me to school, so ni kama hiyo pesa amejilipa, vitu kama hizo. Yeah.
And what amount are we talking about here?
We are talking about 826,000.
And she has said that that is a own way to pay, or it's a money to pay herself for taking you to school.
Yeah, that is what she said. Na pia after hizo mambo zote za kunithreaten, kunitukana, you know, she could insult me mambo makubwa. Yeah, like you're a hoe, you'll never get, we ni malaya, takataka, nitakupiga mpaka polisi iamue, you know. She threatened even to kill me, you know. Akaniambia ile siku yenye nitaenda nyumbani ataniachia boma, unaona.
You know, Faith, those are very strong allegations against your mom. Do you have evidence?
Yeah, I have evidence. I have all the messages. And I shared with my dad. Nikamwambia, this is what I'm going through. My dad had already know what I was going through, but he was not able to maybe solve the situation. So wakati nilimwambia hivyo na my dad was not able to come through for me, na my mom was really insulting me and threatening to beat me, mpaka ananiambia atakuja kunipigia kwa hiyo boma. Then he called wife to my uncle, now her brother, mjomba. Sasa akamwambia, huyo mtoto amezoea kukuja huko kwenu, siku yenye atakuja huko kwenye nitakuja nimpigie huko. So she came, and that time nika feel like nisiende kwa wajomba, wacha niende kwa kina babangu, because now I belong kwa kina baba as an African child, and mali mambo imefika, wacha niende kwa kina babangu. So nikaenda huko, I showed them the messages, wakaniambia sasa hii mambo na the cases na matusi hiyo tunaweza nyamazia, but because she's threatening you, enda police station uandikishe. So nikaenda Tongareni, but kitu ikaniambia usiandikishe. So I called one of my friends, akaniambia don't, yeah, you will make the situation worse. Yeah, just let's try and see how vitu zinaweza kuwa solved, but usiende police station.
Sasa, if she comes across this interview, how will she take it?
Maybe anaweza nitusi tena. Yeah, I'm expecting that. Yeah.
And again, when all that happened, what did it do to you mentally?
I was so suicidal because she even disowned me. Akanitumia message, akaniambia kuna watoto 3 peke yake, na akawataja majina, akasema I'm not her daughter. Na pia, so after all hizi matusi, curses, threats, so venye nilienda kwa kina babangu, and my dad failed me. That is what I can say. Because my uncle, mwenye babangu anafuata, alienda home. So vile alienda nyumbani kuongea na my dad concerning my issue as brothers, so maybe they can see how they'll sort it out. Babangu aliamka akafungua ng'ombe akaenda. Akawacha babangu na akawacha my uncle and my mom. So my uncle was like, tutaongea nini? Mimi nimekuja kuangalia my brother concerning the issue of the daughter. Sasa alivinya alimwachia mamangu, my uncle akanyamaza, akatoka kaenda. So they were like, hata babako tukijaribu kumwambia your issue, he's not even taking it serious. He even doesn't want to talk about it. Na so ikakuwa like, wacha tuachie hapo. So hiyo issue ikaenda mpaka kwa chairman. I think my mom ndalipigia chairman wa uko simu, akamwambia ati ninamtukana. So one day I'm just walking na pata simu. Then he's like, I'm so and so, mi ndo chairman wenu, your mama has called me and ameniambia hivi na hivi. Nikamwambia it is okay, nikamtumia all the evidences, nikamtumia hizo matusi, nikamtumia the receipts, everything. He was like, I didn't know. Nikamwambia ni sawa. So ile time alikuwa pia anajipanga aone kama atasolve issue as a chairman, because ni mamangu amempigia. Then akaniambia, siwezi kuja kwenu without your father's consent. He's the head of your home. Yeye ndo anafaa niite. Mi sifai kujileta mwenyewe. So when he was still waiting, communicate na my dad, maybe they have a meeting or something of the sort, ikawa sasa nimemove from iyo home yenye nilikuwa. Sasa niko kwa shosho, kwa kina babangu. So at that point, ikakuwa I needed my documents because my mom had alikuwa na certificates zangu, kila kitu ni alikuwa nazo. Na nilikuwa nimejaribu kuzipata like almost a whole year. She was not hakukuwa ready let it go. Juu hadi alikuwa ananiambia nitahakikisha umeishi kwa aibu, like she'll frustrate me by all means. So nikaambia my dad kitu ufanye, talk to mama kupatia certificates, ufanye nini uniletee. So one day it was mid-June I think, nikaongea na my dad, nikamwambia I'm going to pick my certificates but nitachukulia kwa barabara, unaona, because I know my mom is chaotic. Nikamwambia nitachukulia kwa barabara, akuje nazo hapo kwa barabara. So venye nilienda, ikawa my dad akakuja bila bahasha, and then I just knew something was not right. So when I saw him and I started crying, nikimwambia dad, you don't know the life that I'm living. Nashinda njaa, natembea kama chokora, I don't have clothes, mom is threatening me like I don't have peace. So ile time nilianza tu kumexplainia, nikaanza kulia, then it's like I collapsed. So ni kama vile nilifaint hivyo, nikabebwa nikapelekwa nyumbani. So niliamka around, I think it was 10 at night, because it was late in the evening, around 7, and my dad was traveling to Nairobi. So I was like, before you travel, help me get my documents. So wakati niliamka, my mom was crying. Mtoto alinipatia pesa, ananidai, Mungu ungenionyesha kwa maono, hizi pesa zitakuja kuniua. Mama alilia, hakupika sapa. My dad went and bought bajias, akakuja, akachemsha maziwa, akanipatia nikakunywa, akaenda kaniletea blanketi yake, akanifunika nikiwa kwa kiti, because even I couldn't walk. No, I think he carried me, alinibeba kanipeleka kwa bedroom na akanifunika. Akachukua blanketi yake kwa bedroom yake, akakuja akanifunika. So my mama alilia for long, like for 3 hours. Alikuwa analia kizunguka tu nyumba. Mungu ungenionyesha hizi pesa zitakuja kuniua, singeguzo, no? So almost everything that she was saying was a lie. Sasa mimi nikanyamaza tu. Then sijui kama hata alilala kwa nyumba hiyo siku, because the following day around 4 in the morning alikuja na panga. Akaniambia, my mom alikuja na panga, akaniambia toka urudi kwenye ulitoka. Ukuje uniletee polisi ama uniletee ukoo. Mimi si mamako. So I was so confused, because saizi hata sijui ni saa ngapi, na sasa juu amekuja na panga, I don't know if I should go out ama amefunga mlango. So nilikimbia kwa room ya babangu. Nikakimbia, nikapush mlango, nikaingia ndani. So kuingia ndani, akakuja na panga, akaanza kukata mlango. Ile alikuwa kikata moja hivi naingia ndani. I screamed. My dad akamwambia it is okay, kama hautaki mtoto, wacha nitoke naye. So instead ya my dad kuambia mamangu maybe atoke aende, it was the other way around. So nikaambia babangu, dad hata usivae viatu, beba tu viatu ende uvalie nje. And I was so scared. Sasa hapo hiyo siku ndo nilikuwa naona tungeuliwa. Sasa tukatoka, and then there was a neighbor there. So when I was screaming, majirani, 2 of my cousins came, because they are just immediate neighbors. Wakakuja, and another neighbor pia kakuja, wakani rescue. And then I told them dad ako nyuma, and then muangalie, he's in danger. So wakaenda wakaangalia dad, wakakuja, then nikafungiwa kwa jirani, tukapigia chief simu, chief hakuwahi kuja. Then in that moment, huyo neighbor kaambia babangu, kitu ufanye, enda uite watu wa kwenu, because mahali imefika you cannot solve it alone. So babangu akaenda kwao, akakuja na the brothers, akakuja na chairman wa ukoo na wajomba. So wakakuja around 15 people. So venye walikuja, my mama alikuwa amesimama na panga, amesimama na kifiekeo, na amesimama na fimbo kwa gate. You see? So and she was just wailing like someone has died. She was just wailing. Sasa unajua mimi kwa jirani mahali nilikuwa is the next home to my home. So nikienda kwa hiyo mlango ya nyuma, I hear everything. like I'm just seeing everything, naona. So my mom alikuwa analia tu. Sasa ni ile yenye alikuwa anataka hawa watu wakuje, but sasa saizi amesimama na panga, amesimama na fimbo, amesimama na kifikeo, like tena hataki waingie. So finally kazini ya my mama kama address, kamwambia it's not right for you to do whatever you are doing. And after wame have a negotiation, akakubali, wakaingia, wakaongea. So after waliongea, mi nikalala kwa hiyo boma like for 2 days, then nikatoka nikaenda kwa shosho. But sasa that time wakasema because venye atmosphere ilikuwa, singepewa documents. Wakaniambia sasa they'll need to have another meeting, and because she has disowned me and whatever she has done it affect even my siblings. Wakasema sasa lazima nirudishwe kwa boma sasa, like sasa narudi kukubaliwa
kitamaduni ama kimila.
Yeah, walikuwa wamesema, one of my uncles had suggested atafute maybe kama ni dawa tuoge nayo, wapike food, even my siblings wakuje, and then tufanyiwe something like cleansing because a lot had happened, but haikufanyika hivyo. So I went back kwa shosho, nikakaa huko for like 2 weeks, then nikarudi. So ile time yenye nilirudi, nililetwa sasa na uncles zangu, sasa brothers akina dad wakanileta. So venye walinileta tuka have hiyo meeting, but hiyo meeting it was all about reconciliation. And sasa ni kama kila mtu alikuwa anaogopa mamangu, hakuna mtu anataka kusema that alikosea. So walikuwa wananiambia ye hawezi niomba msamaha, of which nikasema ni sawa. Wakasema sasa ni mimi nafaa ku apologize. So hiyo mkutano ikaanza, and my dad akafanya introduction, akani-introduce mimi and my mom, like now the reason that has brought you here, you guys you know, and this is the day, because we had 2 meetings before hiyo sasa meeting main sasa ya kurudishwa nyumbani. And mi nikasema, nilikuwa nishaambiwa kitu nafaa kusema with my uncles. So nikasema mimi I hereby apologize for anything that I did to my mom. Yeah, and I'm not here kudai pesa. Nimekuja tu anisame na nifungue. So when my mom alisimama, now the third person kuongea, so hata mambo aliongea ilinifanya nishangae, because she was like, mimi nilimwambia tumie pesa zote, na kwa nini namdai? She has been paying my school fees. No. So at that moment I just knew that my mom had not changed, because that is who she has been to me. Yeah.
So how have you been living after you had that meeting? How has your life been?
Naweza sema that meeting was good. It came with both negative and positive results, because at first I was just hearing that sitapatiwa anything, but kwa hiyo mkutano alisema ya kwamba hakuna pesa atanipatia. She only has my 2 months savings ambayo sina. Ukitaka tu nipeleke police station, sina hiyo pesa. So it was an eye opening, because sasa nilijua pesa hakuna, and I just felt still there was hate, because before tufike kwa hii meeting kuna watu nilikuwa nimewatuma waende wamuongeleshe. Nilikuwa nimeshamwandikia apology letter, nilikuwa nimeshamtumia message ya apology, but things were not changing. Alikuwa bado tu ananitukana, alikuwa tu bado ananithreaten. So hiyo meeting ilini confirm that still my mom is who I have known even before I go to Gulf. Amekuwa hivyo tu. We have not had a good relationship. She would insult me. Yeah. So ilini confirmia that sasa hakuna pesa yenye nitapatiwa, because nilikuwa na hang on like sasa maybe venye ameongeleshwa, because akona plot hajajenga na akona shamba yake personal anaweza uza, so that maybe anipatie something. But at that moment venye alisema she only owes me 2 months savings ambayo hana, na hata nipa, hata nikienda police station hata nipa. I just said it is done. Yeah, so hapa ni ku-accept and also see what to do. And at that point nilikuwa mgonjwa sana, hata sikukuwa naweza kutembea, nilikuwa nashikiliwa. So unapata nilikuwa natibiwa, mtu anatoa pesa yake, natibiwa vitu kama hizo, unaona. Nilikuwa nimetibiwa like na watu kama 4. So nikamwambia mimi niko mgonjwa na niko na deni. Yeah, nimeingia kwa deni. Mimi my greatest plea is that just help me ni settle deni, and also pia nipate medication because I've been battling PCOS, that is nini ovary ilikuwa imefura, na pia nimekuwa na endometriosis and she knows. And the time I came is when Jambiko Ikai had died. You know, I was so scared, like sasa hii kitu imemoa. And when the first time was discovered I have endometriosis at Isipembita, it is a disease research center, I was so scared because I wanted to I started researching about what endometriosis is, and I realized ni ugonjwa haiponi, ni ugonjwa unaweza kosa mtoto, you know, and you have painful menses, like you cannot even walk, una sweat, unaona, na sijakuwa na medication for long, like 8 years. So at that time I was like, maybe atanionea huruma, even hata ajaribu nipate matibabu, but she refused. Yeah.
2 questions. Why do you think she treated you, or she has been treating you like that? And what did she do with her pension, the loan, and the money that you are sending to her?
So there is one of my dad's brother. He told me before apate pension she started buying sijui milango, sijui there were things she was buying, and he said definitely that was your money because pension haikuwa imeingia. Na wakati pension iliingia, I just heard that sijui alibaia 2 of my cousins pikipiki. Then she told me kuna kijana ya my uncle mwenye babangu anafuata alimchangia kubai shamba. That one she told me herself. And pesa ingine sijui mahali alipeleka, because nakumbuka the first time I decided personally to kwenda kureport about the whole story after amekuwa insult na vitu kama hizo, nikafika kwa OCS Tongareni. So wakati nilifika hivi, nilikuwa na hizo risiti. So ile before niandikishe statement, I just remembered I have a very close uncle to me. He's called Andrew. And he was my mom's AEO area officer, something like that. So nikampigia simu, nikamwambia I was named after his mom, so he calls me mom. Nikampigia nikamwambia, my son, I'm in the country. Akaniambia, na uko wapi? So I told him what happened. Nikamwambia, in fact, nimeleta shemeji yako police station huku. Akaniambia, you cannot sue your mom. Panda pikipiki kuje mpaka kwangu. So nikaenda. So vile nilifika, I was also shocked because now he told me he was the one who signed for the loan now. Sasa hata tulikuwa tunashindwa hizi pesa zote zilienda wapi. As for me, because I was not in the country, I cannot even attest mahali hizo pesa zilienda. But kuna plot yenye alikuwa ameanza kujenga, and I think maybe amemaliza ama hajafanya finishing yote, but the structure is there. So I don't know if kama hii structure ndo ilikula hiyo pesa yangu, because she was buying some 1, 2, 3 before she got the pension and also the loan, maybe.
Or why do you think she treated you like that? And do your siblings also receive the same kind of treatment?
Now this hits hard. I was trying to find out, like, why am I maybe probably the only one? And I'm just trying to guess. And sometimes how someone is born, like Jabezi was born in pain, the situation you're born in maybe can predict the location, can predict maybe the outcome of the life that you live.
But your faith?
Sina imani kabisa, and I've really lost faith and hope. I'm so hopeless, that is what I can say. And mimi nikizaliwa, I think one day my mom told me that they had separated with my dad na alikuwa ameenda, but now when she came back wakafunga ndoa, then mimi nikazaliwa. Now you can relate. And then mimi sikulelewa na mama.
No, I can't relate because I thought that one you should be like a gift to them. Yeah. You know, it's yeah. You're a reconciliator.
Hakuna mtu ameniambia, but ilikuja tu kwa akili, but this is what she told me. Yeah, and she said that yeye hakutaka kurudi. And in fact, I'm writing a book, and iko pale chapter 1, it is talking about how I was born. Halafu sasa wakati nimezaliwa, my mom leaves me at 3 months and she joins college. So when she finishes college, hata akikuja holidays, mimi sasa nikalelewa na baba. Unapata like nilikuwa nimemsahau, sikukuwa hata nakubali anibebe. That is what was said. So unapata hiyo bond haikukuwa. So I don't know kama pia ni hiyo bond imechangia. Then at some point also when I was in lower class, nilienda kusomea Ruiru, Matopeni Primary School. So huko tuliishi na dada, tu kuishi na mom. Then they come to separate again, we go with mom, we stay like 2 months, then me I came back. Nikaanza tena kuishi na my dad. So I can say in my vulnerable years, like when I was a toddler, when I was growing up and when I was a teen, I've spent my life with my dad more than my mom, and my dad is my confidant. Yeah, and he's my great friend.
That is a bit comforting that you have a pillar that you can talk to and lean against. But how is you right now? How is your life? How are you doing? How is Faith?
Faith is not okay. Because living without a mom for a long time, and she's alive, and she's the cause of my pain and my shame. I cannot say that it's an easy thing. You know, it is good ujue mtu alikufa kwa kaburini because they're not causing you any pain or discomfort or yeah, because I remember when I was in Form 3, unajua there was a time my mom alinipiga akisema ya kwamba that I slept with my dad, and that thing started even before she came back because si alikuwa ameenda, then akasema babenu ameuza shamba, anakula pesa na malaya, murudi awasomeshe. The same person who told us twende nitawasomesha alitukataa. Unaona, angetukubali hata kama they had differences with my dad because akwa shaenda na sisi. So wakati tulirudi mimi nilifaa kubaki because I was in high school. So my dad started paying my school fees. So allegations zikatoka kwenye alikuwa, akapiga simu akasema maybe I have something with my dad, and so my dad's cousin, she called me and asked me, did you do it? I said I've never done it. My father has never been like, hajawahi kuonyesha any interest in me. He's just my dad and my friend. So hiyo story kaisha hivyo. Then my mom akarudi. So wakati alirudi, one day my mom's brother alikuwa na kanisa tu hapo karibu kwetu. So si mimi there was fasting for 3 days. So si mimi nikaamka nikaenda church day 1, day 2. I think it was on 27th of December 2013. So wakati nilienda the following day kwa mkasubuhi, nilikuwa naosha sufuria ya ugali ndo niweke chai. So I greeted my mom like mama habari ya asubuhi. Do you know what she answered me? Aliniambia hatutakuwa wanawake wawili kwa hii boma. Mimi nilienda kanisa bila kuoga. I could not even understand it because it was fasting. Mimi nikatoka nikaenda church. So wakati nilienda church nikarudi, nikapata my mama anaongea na my cousin kwa simu. Yeah, my cousin alikuwa anakaa Nakuru that time. Sa mtoto wa brother yake akamwambia kwa Kiluya ati leo kati yeye na babake mmoja wao atakufa. Sasa na babangu kulikuwa na ndoa mahali hapo hivyo. So yeye alikuwa amekombolewa na gari aenda kabebe, nafikiri alikuwa bibi harusi. So my dad hakuwa. So mimi nakwambia kitu nilisikia na masikio yangu. And my brother was in the kitchen. So wakati nilisikia hivyo nikapita na mlango ya mbele ningie kwa bedroom yangu. I had some 200 shillings. Niende nichukue hiyo 200 nitoke. Naye akapita na mlango ya nyuma akakuja akanifungia ndani. She started beating me. Akanigwara hii uso, then akaningoa nywele. Nilikuwa nimeshuka braids. Literally aliningoa kabisa. Akanipiga mpaka hii macho ilikuwa na internal bleeding. Hii macho ilikuwa damu yote. So at that moment, ikawa sasa amechinja kuku, amepika chapo. Imagine they're eating the whole family na mimi amenifungia hapo. So at that moment, nikachukua a plastic box, nikaeka juu ya kitanda, nikapanda with few of my clothes inside the bag, nikaruka kwa storeroom. So your storeroom iko na emergency window exit. That is how nilitoka. It was around 9. Nikatoka nikaenda mpaka kwa my aunt, kazini ya my dad, ule mwenye alikuwa shambi wangwa, ule mwenye aliniita. Akaniambia that these are the claims. Yeah. So vile nilienda kwake, akanipeleka kwa real sister ya babangu, now firstborn. Akasema mimi I can't solve this because mimi ni distant relative. So wakati tulienda huko, they were like, we want to do cleansing. Nikawambia it didn't happen, you see. Na I remember in Form 1, we had, tulikuwa tumesoma about covenants. Like, covenants ziko na results. So wakati nilikumbuka hivyo, nikasema I didn't do it. Sasa si nitaingia kwa hizi rituals na zitani affect. Then why should I say a lie? No, nikastick kwa kitu yenye ilikuwa. Not that I wanted to defend myself or my dad, but that thing has been there. Na it's like kila mtu anajua I slept with my dad. So hata kwa hiyo mkutano, my uncles were convincing me and asking me, why is your mom hating you like this? Is it because you slept with your dad? And I'm like, mimi sijawahi lala na babangu. Yeah, so sijui kama ni punishment, and then ukumbuke anasema anasema watuizi kaa boma moja. That is what aliambia mtoto wa brother yake, now my cousin Maria. So Maria kaniambia mamako alisema ile siku utakuja kwa hii boma atatoka. You see, na the first day I went hakunisalimia, kuniongelesha. Hiyo mara ya pili wakati nilirudi ndo ni kama lilala nje na karudi sasa napanga that morning. Yeah.
So how are you doing, Faith? Tell us how you are right now.
Right now I'm not okay. Siko sawa because naona hiyo pesa ni kama I don't know naweza describe aje, because hiyo pesa sasa imekuja imeleta uadui, because me and my family we are not together, and nikiwa huko my sister si alikuwa nafanya harusi, that was May 2022. My mama can convince, akaniambia hatuna pesa ya kutosha, if you can chip in. So nikatuma 100,000. So akanituma 100,000 na pesa ya kuosha gown and some other money. Again my sister may turn against me, she has been insulting me. Yeah, I've been there for her. Amekuwa akinitukana. You see now me and my mom, sasa hapo nyuma ilikuwa mbaya, but sasa saa hizi imefika ile level yenye I don't think if I'll ever step nitarudi nyumbani. So ni kama nimewa lose. Yeah, in case of anything I can't say that I have a family. Yeah, and I feel so bad. Yeah.
You have Tuko family. They have listened to your story, and we understand the situation that you might be in. So what kind of assistance or support would you wish to get from Tuko family?
Mi kitu yenye naomba sana ni maybe the requests can be maybe many but this is the only chance naweza waomba msaada, and najua nilichangia kufika mali nimefika. There were signs I could have avoided, but sometimes you can give someone a second chance and they be good, and that is what I thought. But sasa wakati nilikuwa naambia mamangu nimekosa mpaka pads, niko mgonjwa sina pads, nimelala sina food, ile yenye unakunywa mpaka uji ya unga ya white na haina skari. Like I've lived a terrible life, but my mama alikuwa ananitukana tu. Nikimwambia hivyo ananitukana tu. So wakati nilikuja mimi hata sijawahi nunua nguo. Na kitu ingine mkosi like trouble, I don't know, follow sinners or what. Kuna mkosi pia ilifanyika. Now that the time I was living Saudi Arabia, zile nguo nilikuwa nimepewa kama gifts. My madam alizitoa zote, even the inner clothes, like nilikuja tu na nguo zenye nimevaa. You see. So sikukuwa na nguo nikija, then I met one lady that nilimmeet kwa Lingugi platform. She's called Rhoda Msioka. Huyo ndo alikuja akanipatia 4 panties and 2 bras na akanipatia some clothes but zilikuwa ndogo. So from that time sikuwa na afford viatu. So the time I was staying with my guy, that time he was also jobless. So you can imagine nilikuwa navaa nguo zake and waist yake ni kama sijui ni 36. So nilikuwa navaa longi zake, then nafunga na makonge. Then the t-shirts were big, you know. And then on Sunday when I go to church naomba nguo. Na nilikuwa na kiatu pea moja. Hiyo kiatu nilivaa mpaka ikararuka. Sasa ile niliponea hivi kidogo kukanyaga chini. So I called my aunt, my mom's cousin, mwenye alinilipia Moi University. So nikamcall, I talked to her. She bought me 2 pairs of shoes, but siwezi sema hata ati niko na nguo. Yeah, sina nguo and I would also love maybe to have a job or open a business. Yeah.
And you said your skills are?
Niko na skill ya kupika chapati ama fast food, and also there are some baskets I'm making, these food warmers. Yeah, nimejifunza hiyo skill, I have them. And also currently I'm working on my book. Pia naweza omba mtu anisupport if my story can touch you, because what I've said is just like a quote of my story, and my book is there, nimeiandika, but nafa kuwork on publisher, nafa kumlipa the person who is editing and even working on the manuscript, because I only have the story. Sasa ule mtu anashughulikia pia nafa nimlipe, of which I'm not able. And also naweza tamani sana kurudi shule, because hata wakati nilikuwa nimeapply kurudi shule, alafu maybe also I can do a business, because niliona nimechoka nikikuwa Saudi, niliona nimechoka. Even if my mom was saying I go to Dubai, that was not my thing. I wanted to come back and just do something with my life. Yeah.
So even right now you are borrowing clothes?
Yeah, mpaka saizi I can't say ati niko na nguo. Yeah, sina nguo, sina sweta. In fact, hata hii ni sweta ya rafiki na and this is the only dress that I came with. This was the only gift that I was given there that survived. But otherwise, siwezi sema ati niko na nguo ama niko na viatu. I have like maybe 2 pairs zenye nimegiftiwa na just friends. Yeah, na siwezi sema ati niko na nguo.
Faith, you are such a hard worker, so do not give up. This platform was to give you an opportunity to express, or we say to take out what is in your chest, that which might be pressing you down. Therefore, do not give up. Tuko family have heard you. I'm sure they will come in a big way. You'll be a testimony. So sharing your story is just the beginning of your recovery. It was not your wish to lose all your savings, and whatever has happened between you and your mom, we hope that maybe it may get resolved and you can come together as a family. I don't know the relationship, how it has been before, or what it might turn out to be, but take a day at a time. Do not give up. That is my word. Do not give up. We've heard you as Tuko family, and I'm sure they will walk with you and you will stand again. And we wish you the very, very best. And thank you so much for trusting our platform with your story, however painful it is. We appreciate you. Yes.
Asante. Yeah, asante sana. And if someone is there and you just feel like unaweza support mtu arudi shule, and so many people have been advising me that it's not a must that you go back to school, you can just do a business, but I still have a heart to go back to school. I just want to get that paper. It is not ati lazima nipate kazi na hiyo karatasi, but I just feel there's something that is not complete in me. I still want to go back to school. So if you're watching me from all over the world, I know that Tuko inawochiwa in Asia, inawochiwa in America. Mimi naweza tamani nirudi shule. So if you are there and you can feel like unaweza ni support nirudi shule, I'm so much willing to go back to school. And also, even if I go back to school, I can't say that school itafanya nikose maybe kurun a business or do what. If you are there and you feel you can support me maybe to go on with my skill, ama maybe kufanya biashara, you are free.
Please give out your contact so that they can reach out to you.
Okay, so you can reach me on WhatsApp or phone call, that is 07 28 679 456. And on social media platform, Facebook, najita Manas Outfit. I wanted to run a business clothes that I've never done it. So nilianzisha hiyo page nikijua na kuja kufanya biashara ya nguo. Nilipenda sana biashara ya nguo. And on TikTok, I think Manas Empire. Yeah.
And that phone number is registered as?
My name's on M-Pesa, or registration ya hiyo laini ni Faith na Mikoye Kisiangani. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Faith. Thank you for your time. We wish you the very best. The story will change.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and karibuni sana tena.
Have you ever listened to a story and you lack words to actually even conclude it or describe how it makes you feel? Faith's story is one of them. What have you picked from her experience in Kenya, abroad, and back in the country, and the relationship within her family, and specifically her mom, who ought to be her shield? How can we walk with faith to recovery? My name is Kingori Wangeshi, and this has been my story right here on Tuko from Bungoma County. Thank you for watching. Until next time, God bless.